Arweinydd Grŵp UKIP.
The Leader of the UKIP Group, Neil Hamilton.
The temperature in this chamber may rise tomorrow, but I wonder if the First Minister has seen that the Met Office forecasts for outside show that we are likely to have sub-zero temperatures for the next week or two. I wonder if he also saw on Monday in The Guardian that there was a report saying that electricity and gas prices have risen in the last 20 years by 3 times the rate of inflation, and the average household now spends £562 a year on heating and lighting. What it didn't say was that this is overwhelmingly due to the rise in green taxes, which will cost households almost £150 a year from next year. And they've risen by 2/3 since 2014 and are now 20% of the typical electricity bill. Considering that a quarter of the households in Wales live in fuel poverty, how can we justify loading these charges upon the poorest and most vulnerable in society?
This is a man who voted in favour of privatising
Just answer the question.
Electricity and gas. That's the reason why prices have gone up. The fact is, there's no real competition. People don't really understand how to get the best tariff, despite what people's best endeavours to do that. In fact, the service was far better when it was when we had a nationalised provider, and that is something I'd like to see return in the future. It's nothing to do with green taxes. It's all to do with the fact that private companies make profits on the back of ordinary people, something he supported and that party over there supports as well.
The First Minister, of course, did not answer the question. 5% of an electricity bill goes in profits to the electricity companies, 20% in green taxes. So the First Minister is completely wrong. But however bad things are at the minute, things are going to get worse, because the OBR forecasts, which accompanied the budget papers this year, show that environmental levies will rise from £10.7 billion this year to £13.5 billion by 2022. So that means green taxes will then be over £200 per annum for the average electricity used, and 1/3 of power bills. The introduction of smart meters is going to add another £11 billion to that. That's an £84 a year extra for the next 5 years for every household. And also an extra £2 billion is going to be spent on upgrading transmission lines and infrastructure to cater for remote wind farms. That adds another £25 per household. So I repeat my question, which the First Minister didn't answer the first time around. How can we justify loading these charges upon the poorest and most vulnerable in society?
Well, I mean, first of all, I had some rumbling from the party opposite about the overcharging of customers. In 2015, when my party stood in the general election, they accused us of being Marxists for wanting to put a price cap on energy prices. That's how much they cared for ordinary people. We all know what the Tories are like. Now, in answer to the question posed by the leader of UKIP, every single method of generating energy costs money. Every single method. Nuclear costs a great deal of money as well. Now, yes, we do want to ensure that we have cleaner, greener energy. It's good for energy security. Why would we want to import energy from other countries when we can generate our own in a renewable way? Or is he saying that we should just have coal-fired power stations absolutely everywhere and more open cast? Because that is the upshot of what he's saying.
Refuses to answer the question, how do we justify loading poor people with these excessive charges, which are going to grow and grow with every year that passes? The OBR papers, the fiscal supplementary tables following the budget, show that the cost of the Climate Change Act in 2022 will be nearly £15 billion a year, and over the next 5 years, the average household will be spending an enormous amount of its income on green taxes. £66 billion, £2,500 per household over the next 5 years will be taken from household budgets in green taxes. Green taxes are driving poor and vulnerable people into the red.
Well, he talks about driving poor and vulnerable people into the red. The privatisation of energy was one way of doing that. We know that. His party stood on a programme of a flat tax, which would increase taxes for the vast majority of poorer people and reduce them for people who are earning more. So he's in no position to lecture anybody else about looking after poorer people. And let me ask him this. At the end of the day, he doesn't believe in climate change. I do, he doesn't. I look at the science, he doesn't. That's the way that he sees it. I believe that cleaning up the environment costs money. The UK was a mess in the 1980s. It was filthy. The River Irwell in Salford would catch fire if you threw a match into it. Where I live in Bridgend, the River would run different colours according to what had been chucked into it by whatever industry it was upriver. Nobody says to me, I want to go back to those days where the environment was degraded, where the rivers were polluted, where the air was polluted, but it seems to be something that he's more than happy to see again.
Question 3.
Question 3.